Hey interns, today we're going to be looking at how to complete the second activity in our day 3 of our engineering internship. We're going to be looking at some of the different focus questions that we should be keeping in the back of our mind as we go through our reading, and then obviously focusing on our annotating and our reading guidelines as we dive into this activity. So there's 2 ways to access this, obviously through the second activity tab here. You can also access it through the lesson brief. Your screen might look a little different from mine, but if you find your digital tools, okay, we're going to be completing the Chapter 3 Velocity, Mass, and Impact Force in the dossier. So if you are to click on the second activity tab and then scroll down, you'll be able to access Chapter 3 using this area here, and then scrolling to the bottom and clicking Next. And then next again should take you to that third chapter, Velocity, Mass, and Impact Force. You should still be able to do all of your annotations as normal, notes, highlighting, and such. And then when you're done, obviously going through and completing the survey to submit your annotations. Now, if you go through the lesson brief, okay, same idea. You'll find your digital tools, though. You'll enter into the dossier. From here, go up to your 3 little dots and lines here and find Chapter 3. Again, this allows you to kind of see the entire screen a little bit better. It's a little less messy. Again, you can do the same things with your annotations as before, highlighting, adding notes, and such. So let's talk about the annotations and our reading guidelines as we go through this article. So as we're reading, we need to remember that we need to think carefully about what you are understanding as you read. So are the things that make sense, things that don't make sense. We need to make sure that we read things more than once. If something doesn't make sense, reading it a second or third time can help clarify. You need to examine any images that are represented in the text and help connect them with what's being said. Make sure you're identifying things you want to discuss later, because again, if you do have any questions or if you do have any aha moments, you can help bring that to the table and help your fellow classmates. Now, these are things that we should keep in mind as we read. In terms of our annotations, we're highlighting challenging words that we find, things that maybe don't make sense or we're unsure of. We're making notes of any questions we have. So highlighting sections, typing in those questions that we need answered to help us clarify or understand the text better. And then last but not least, we're noting any connections between your personal experiences and what you read. This is the most important one that we're going to be focusing on right now, because we should be connecting the reading to our actual egg drop activity. And we're going to focus specifically on these 3 focus questions to help connect what we're doing with what we're reading. So let's go ahead and look at these questions real quick. First one says, how do I decrease the time of my egg pod collision? Okay. If you're somebody who likes to have the questions in front of you, I highly recommend adding these questions to maybe the top or to the side of your paragraphs so that you can come back to them at the end of a paragraph and say, okay, did this text say anything about how I decrease the time of my egg pod collision? Did this sentence or this paragraph say anything about how I can decrease the velocity of the egg before impact? Did it say anything about how I decrease the mass of my egg pod? Okay, if you try to tackle all 3 questions at the end of your reading, you might miss some ideas or you might miss some connections. So I highly recommend going through each question, maybe at the end of each paragraph or the end of each sentence, to give us some real context, and then adding in those notes, okay? Don't just have a mental check. Do a hard copy, typing in, annotated, here's what I'm thinking. Here's how I could decrease the time of my egg pod collision. Here's how I could decrease the velocity. Here's how I could decrease the mass, okay? And again, having those annotations will always allow us to then come back and again, identify things that we can discuss later, whether they're questions we have, aha moments we have, or things we need clarity on. So at this point, you should be able to get into your Chapter 3 reading, focusing on our annotations, focusing on making those connections with these questions, and making sure we take the time to really look at our reading, okay? If you have questions, make sure you reach out to your specific internship coordinator. Otherwise, good luck.